We are rejoined by Armstrong Williams and Rick Ungar as we continue our discussion about what has transpired in Ferguson, Missouri. And the question that we are using as our Newsmax.com poll question is something that I think needs some attention. Armstrong Williams, you were talking about the approach to law enforcement. A lot of people have talked about community policing. Senator Rand Paul last week talked about demilitarizing local police forces. In your mind, is that an action that should be taken?
You know, all actions should be considered. You know, listen, Senator Rand Paul is well intended, and I tell you, he's getting a lot of respect for being so candid and blunt in his assessment of the situation in St. Louis. It's something that's very unusual you see coming out of the GOP, and I think people are really shocked. Because I think the main thing is, and I think Rick and I will probably agree on this, Congressman, and that is, the problem is that we set up a society, and the media is really promulgates this in a very, very dangerous way, making us believe that if it's a police officer or white on black crime, it's more important, it makes all the headlines, as if those lives are more valuable than others. And if it's on black crime, it gets very little press. You look at what's happening going on in Chicago and the number of killings that take place. And then you set up this dynamic where if someone who looks like you can't necessarily speak out on this racial violence because of the hue of your skin. This is not about black and white. To me, this is an issue of humanity. Anytime a life is lost in a very tragic way, a piece of our humanity is erased away. We all should speak out against injustices. We make too much about this issue of race. What has happened in St. Louis is a travesty of justice, a young man being shot for 6 times. But also, we have to also understand the sensitivity of policing, and that they're fearful and they're just as frightened as you and I can be. And sometimes they use that gun as a weapon to protect them. And obviously, the way he shot this kid shows that he was afraid and he was really out of control. And then the police officer loved using this thing. Well, they raised their hands, so we thought they were going for their gun. I don't know many cases across the United States where that statement has been made, where it has ever been proven that someone was actually going for their gun. And so what we got to do, we got to address this situation just as vigorously in Chicago and other places where this violence takes place. Because it may be in Chicago today, it may be in St. Louis, but it can be in your community tomorrow. And all Americans, regardless of what their race and their background, who believes and understands right from wrong, can speak out against these injustices and mentor these young kids. And we don't talk about the breakdown of the family. What is missing here is the lack of fathers in the home. You have these out of wedlock births where a lot of these children are becoming adults today. They don't have the values. They're not taught right from wrong. And these are the kind of situations.
Sorry to jump in, Mr. Armstrong. We just have a certain amount of time, and I want to ask Rick a question very quickly. Rick, we know that Governor Nixon didn't inform the president when he called out the National Guard. Do you think this was a mistake?
I don't know if there's a legal responsibility to inform the president or not. I wouldn't make too much of it. I'll tell you what, though, I think there's one, I was thinking about your poll. And by the way, I got to say this, listening to Armstrong, it kind of makes you wish that somebody like Armstrong were heading into Ferguson to take an advisory and leadership role than some other folks that have gone there. But I do want to comment on your poll. I wonder if we haven't missed the point on this militarization thing right from the outset. I can envision situations where a local police force can benefit and the community can benefit from that equipment being supplied. Maybe the question should be, was a bad decision made to use that military equipment in the circumstances that where it was used at the outset of this situation? I would argue that was a mistake. There may be other circumstances where it's a good thing for them to have it. I think it's less about whether we militarize them or not, and much more about the choices the local police force makes in using that equipment.
Armstrong, you're a veteran broadcaster. There's less than a minute. 30 seconds to you for the last word, at least this morning.
You know, I'm so glad to share this time with you and Rick Ungar to bring the common sense. This is the responsibility of the media. What we should do is not be making news, but reporting news and bring calmness and logic to these type of situations. And I congratulate you for this type of discussion this morning.
Well, Armstrong, we hope to have you back on many more occasions to talk about other subjects in the news. Rick Ungar, as always, from Newsmax New York, we thank you. And gentlemen, we look forward to discussing other issues of great import in the not too distant future with you both. Thank you so much. Now again, we made mention of the poll. We should do it once more. The Newsmax.com poll is Rand Paul right? Are the Ferguson, Missouri police over-militarized? Go to Newsmax.com/poll and vote.